as we all know what is happening on this earth. If we read newspaper on any day, there are enough evidences that this earth, humanity as a whole, is going through a crisis. So a question naturally comes that what is the cause of this crisis and how we are going to meet this crisis? And it is not only for us, but for the whole globe, for all the generations which are going to come. And I begin by sharing a quote of Krishnamurti. He says that when there is a crisis, and life is a crisis, if one is tremendously alert, watchful, sensitive, then you see that every moment is a crisis. A crisis is not something which happens only occasionally. It is happening all the time. The crisis being the challenge which needs immediate response. So if we are really sensitive, we can see that crisis is happening every moment. The way we live, the way we relate, the way we think, the way we approach challenges. There is a crisis at every level. There is a crisis politically, as we all know. There is a crisis religiously, culturally, socially, economically. At every level of existence, we can face that crisis. That first of all, to understand what is the crisis and then how to meet the crisis. Krishnamurti spoke for about 70 years. And I feel that his whole intention was to sensitize us, to awaken us to this fact of crisis. He was constantly saying that the house is on fire, the house of our globe, the house of humanity. Whatever we are doing, or whatever we have been doing, we have been contributing to that crisis. So, do we realize that the house is on fire? Because it often happens that we become used to of crisis. We lose sensitivity, and whatever happens somehow doesn't affect us so deeply. At some level it will affect. Recently I was traveling a little bit within India, and I was sitting with some elderly friends, and they were reading newspaper. After some time, one of the friends said that there is nothing in the newspaper. So what does that mean? Actually, there was no exciting news. There was no big, like crisis showing in that newspaper. So they were expecting that, something thrilling should happen all the time. And this is how mind starts even deriving pleasure in, getting all these bad news, some scandals happening. If we don't get any scandal in the newspaper, it looks like, it is boring. So see the condition of the mind. We have become so used to of these sufferings, crises, scandals, problems. Unless something is happening, we feel that, oh, life is so empty, so boring. So this is something really quite tragic. To what extent human mind can become used to of something, can become mechanical, and stop really seeing, feeling, realizing what is life. And whatever crisis we see outside is only a mirror of what is happening inside us, inside the human consciousness. So outer crisis has a deep connection with the inner crisis. We can't say that, the outer crisis comes out of the blue. It has a deep causation inside human mind, inside human consciousness. That's why if we want to bring about any deep change in the world, in the society, it has to begin at the level of human consciousness, at the level of each one of us. And if we go deeply, we can trace back the origin of any crisis in the human consciousness, in the ignorance of human consciousness. Whatever crisis we see outside is somehow deeply connected. It is an outcome of mind's ignorance, the inattention. Because whenever the mind is inattentive, is not aware of whatever is happening inside and outside, it is living mechanical life. And it is living an automatic life based on past memories and thoughts. So, deep ignorance, which is lack of awareness about oneself, lack of self-knowledge, is the fundamental cause of most of our crises, most of our sufferings and problems. And all the teachings which we see, whether of Krishnamurti or Buddha or any teacher, they are inviting us to be awake to this fundamental cause of crisis, of our suffering, which is ignorance. And what is this ignorance? Ignorance is not knowing oneself as one is, or knowing oneself only through the conditioned mind, through the thinking process, through the past memories. When we are knowing ourselves or others, identifying ourselves and others on the basis of past memories, images, then we are living in the very limited field, the limited field of the past baggage which we all carry. As we are aware, perhaps, that this human mind is conditioned for thousands of years. And this conditioning contributes to the ignorance of the mind, of human consciousness. And thought sustains this conditioning. Thought, which is a response or reaction from the past memories. So there are deep implications if we are living unconsciously with these mechanical way of thinking, mechanical way of reacting, living. And if we watch carefully, that all these crises have a deep root in the inattention. And this inattention, when there is an inattention, then thought, which is also a wonderful tool for our existence, it moves automatically. Thought, which is quite useful in our day-to-day survival, then it enters, as Krishnamurti says, into the psychological field. The same tool which is so useful physically becomes quite dangerous psychologically. And this tool, which is based on past memories, contributes to the making of the self, or you can call it ego. So, as Krishnamurti teachings say, that every movement of ego contributes to the crisis. Because then we are living life from the past memories. And this is quite interesting that the tool which contributed to the origin of crisis, we use the same tool in order to end the crisis. And how can it be possible? The tool of thought or the past memories which created the crisis, it cannot end the crisis. So this is something first to understand, that crisis cannot be met adequately, intelligently through the same tool which contributed to it. So the natural question is there a different tool to meet the crisis? And what is that tool? Because if we depend on the same tool, on the tool of past baggage, past memories, then we remain in the same loop, in the same field. So is there a different tool? And as the teachings of Krishnamurti says, that there is a tool, the tool of pure observation, the tool of choiceless awareness, the tool of attention, which is not part of the conditioned mindset. So these are the only tools which are unconditioned. And if we meet any challenge with this tool, there would be a right action. So is it possible, first of all, to be aware of these tools? Because usually we don't, because of our education, our cultural upbringing, we are not aware of this tool. Nobody has raised such questions. So we heavily depend on the tool of the past, on the tool of thought. And these teachings are inviting us to awaken these tools, which are given by nature. Like in this very moment, we are listening to each other. So this tool of listening, this tool of pure listening, this does not depend on any past background, any conditioning. We can listen to each other very deeply, without any barriers, without any past baggage, without any center of ego. That's why this tool of listening is also, I feel, a tool of love, a movement of love or affection, whatever you may call it. Another tool, which is part of the same unconditioned movement, is the tool of pure observation. We can watch whatever is happening in this moment without depending on the past memories. And this pure observation, which is free from the observer, which is free from the ego, reveals, illuminates the whole field of ignorance. And once we become awake to the ignorance, that awakening itself is the beginning of the ending of the ignorance. So I feel that if we are aware, if we are awake to this whole mechanism of inattention, which is part of our collective conditioning, and if we are simply attentive in this very moment, this attention will bring about a different kind of response, a different kind of action. Because meeting any crisis demands a totally new energy. We cannot meet the crisis with the old energy, because old energy itself contributed to the crisis. And the new energy, which is available at any moment, here and now, that new energy is the energy of deep listening, deep awareness, deep attention, or we can call it the energy of deep love or compassion. Any activity of self which is a creation of thought is a crisis. Any psychological activity of thought which gives rise to the sense of ego or false identities becomes the origin of any crisis. And this deep observation is a crisis for the ego, for these psychological movements of the thought. So I feel that these teachings, they create an inner crisis, a crisis for the ego, because it is very challenging for the ego to acknowledge that it is nothing but a bundle of images, a bundle of reactions from past memories. Once it acknowledges it, then it finds its right place. Then it is not unnecessarily moving here and there. So this deep listening, deep observation, deep love is actually a crisis for the ego. Both cannot exist together. That's why sometimes this journey of self-knowing can bring a deep turmoil. And I feel that it's a very creative turmoil. It is a turmoil for the ego, not for the whole being. We actually wrongly identify ourselves with only a small field of this ego, which is only a creation of images and thoughts. But once we see the reality, the nature of the reality, then we stop identifying with this small field. Then we realize that the life, the existence is beyond all this small pool of conditioned field.